So you have workers in China.
We do.
Are they working full stop? What's going on?
Well, they're working, but I think the thing is, it depends on where you are in China. For example, we have a factory. Everybody went home after for the Chinese New Year, and depending on where they were, they made their way back to their place of work with varying speed. And so some of our factories are 95%. Another one is 67% of the people are working. 25% of our people are in quarantine in that city because they came from another place when they entered 14-day quarantine. And then another 10 or 15% are someplace else in quarantine trying to make their way over the series of boundaries which require quarantines. The Chinese government, I think, hasn't covered itself in glory in not having a central policy on this, and so they've made recovery worse. Now, for Snap-on, we're kind of not really a global sourcer. We make in the markets where we sell the product. So this doesn't disrupt. It'll create some disruption, but not like maybe other companies.
So you're not seeing any sort of disruption to getting supplies to the U.S. or to Europe or anything like that?
Well, I think it's still early days on that. I think, first of all, people got ready for the Chinese New Year, so they had supplies in terms of components and so on. So in the factory, say, for example, that has 69% direct workers back, we're working the white-collar workers as well. So as long as we have components, we'll do okay. So I think most companies like us, if we're exporting to the U.S. out of those factories, they're going to be okay through the first quarter, let's say. But after that, how do they get supplies from other factories all over China?
And I know you had a little bit of an increase in inventory at the end of the fourth quarter, and that was more to do with new products and sort of expanding franchisee selling capacity. But does that help you?
It's good now, right? Exactly. It's one of the better things now, you know. So I think that's what we're seeing in China. I think in the United States, in Italy, we have a factory in Italy too, and that's only about a couple hours south of where they've locked down part of Lombardia. But that factory's working at full speed. And in fact, the cafes and the restaurants and the hotels in the town are full, so that's working okay. The United States, we'll see what happens. What we're doing is we're getting ready, though. Business is about getting ready. So we're establishing disruption committees in every location. So if people can't come to work, we're going to manage that. If people have to work from home, we're going to have call trees, so which people can work on different levels, so we optimize the situation.
It seems like the concern has shifted, though, from supply chain disruption to outright demand. So what are you seeing on the demand front, and are you worried?
Well, China's a basket case, right? China, nobody's buying anything, you know. The hits just keep on coming.
Hard to do that when you're in quarantine.
Right. How are you going to do it? So that's a problem. So I think it's unclear where China will go. I remember in Tiananmen, it took a while to come back. In the United States and other places, we'll see. I'm not so sure about that. What we see is, gee, you know, larger companies are kind of concerned. They tend to be more conservative. Smaller companies, it's full speed ahead.
So if you feel like you're relatively well positioned to manage the supply issue, for demand, if we saw the Fed cut rates, if we saw like a targeted stimulus, does that help you, or how does that help you?
I mean, I think if you think about the economy, you think about people buying, it's the psychology stupid. I think somebody said that, and I think the way people think of things is important. Look at the stock market. Why did the stock market go down? I don't understand it. Aren't the companies going to be every bit as valuable after this burns its way out? I think they are. And in fact, companies generally, after recessions, come out stronger. So if you're talking about long-term valuations of companies, I don't see there being a problem. It's just psychology, I believe.
But on the psychology front, I mean, does this start to hit consumer confidence? I mean, I guess when you have the photos of people stockpiling bottled water and food.
It can, and we're readying ourselves for that, and that could be an eventuality that occurs. But on the other hand, we're in repair, and people will usually keep driving, and they need to repair their cars, and so we generally have solid performance. So not that we won't be affected, though. I don't want to say we won't be affected.
But so you see it, though, as long as central banks and governments can be seen as being supportive and the market's react in kind, you feel like that's enough to then help the demand side for your business? Well,
I think this, okay, a couple of things. I'm not sure the market is the best barometer for the economy. I'm not so sure. So the central banks may affect it, and we love great news, and we love the stock market to go up. But in terms of my customers, in the garages, the people in the shops that are grinding metal, even some of the bigger operations that are preparing, trying to fulfill their order book that's been in place, I'm not sure the market necessarily affects them. You know, it's kind of a newsflash that corporate America, at least manufacturers, don't necessarily conduct their business completely on the basis of the market.
So, so what would help you then?
Well, I think the whole idea of the psychology in general. You know, if you read The Great Influenza or Pale Rider, the books about the 1920 flu epidemic, what becomes clear is confidence is impelled by the leadership. You know, the government. I think if the American government has solid leadership, solid positions in terms of they're upfront with the people, this is the lesson of the book, and they have a national policy which makes sure we know we're handling this like a company should do. This is what we do in companies. Then I think we're okay. I think American people react positively to this. I was in Vietnam, you know, and when you went around Vietnam, you'd go to cities and mortars would be falling every other day. Yet people kept their lives going. Mm-hmm. They just accepted a risk after a while. And it had to do with their belief in society moving forward, and that's proportional to the leadership, business leadership and governmental leadership.
Now, I know you don't usually give guidance, but have you put any sort of parameters around the impact of
we don't
the
give
coronavirus
guidance.
at this
point?
We
don't give guidance. Just, I think, if you look at us versus other companies, we're less exposed. That's what I could say for sure. You know, we make in the markets where we sell. We source some things, but I think our first quarter should be okay. But after that, it's a question. I think our sales in China will be affected. You know, sales in Asia in general will be affected. That'll work its way out.
Do you, for future term, there's been a lot of conversation about how people will change their supply chains or maybe restructure their company in terms of you're going to work from home now, you're not going to commute in, or you can do this and you can stay home rather than taking a business trip. Does that affect you at all? Like, do you think you're going to think about that now in a different way?
I don't think the work from home thing, although that could happen. That could happen. I think that's more a short-term thing. I think if it was efficient for people to work at home, people would have done it already. They may take a longer look at it now. I think supply chain has been moving in that direction ever since the tariffs. Mm-hmm. I mean, actually, this is sort of an extension of tariffs, isn't it? So American business has been moving in a way to reduce their vulnerability to China associated with the tariffs, and I think this just extends that effort.